Welcome to the second video in my video series where I cover the features of my Procedural Planet Generator. Today we are going to create a cool looking alien planet manually from scratch using the node groups that come with my Procedural Planet Generator, which is available for sale on Gumroad. Now of course, with the random generator add-on that comes with my planet generator, you can easily create alien planets in a matter of seconds by just selecting alien under climate and vegetation and then clicking on generate random material, and there you go, you have different looking alien planets in a matter of seconds. However, I just want to demonstrate how to set up the node groups manually, as it can help you understand how the materials are created and also offers possibilities beyond what the random generator can do. We want to focus on the planet surface material first, so we deactivate our cloud and atmosphere objects here and focus on just the planet surface. Then we also delete the randomly generated planet material here and create a new material, delete the principal BSDF node, and then we can start adding in our group nodes. A very basic planet with Earth-like features with terrain and oceans, these three node groups that come with my generator. First, we need a climate zone node, which we get by pressing Shift A or going to add, and then under group we can add our climate zones here. Just make this a bit bigger so we can read all the values. And then we also need a terrain node, which is just here, and we need an ocean node. Right. And now we have to just connect them. Just for the climate zone nodes, these are connected to the color input of the terrain node. And the terrain node has a shader output. The shader output has to be inputted into the ocean shader input. And the ocean output can then now be inputted into the material output. And now we can see we have a planet covered fully in ocean. And for this to work properly, we need to also connect the ocean masks, because the ocean masks determine how, which areas of the planet are covered with terrain and which are covered with surface. So if I would set this mask to 1, you could see we have full terrain, and if I set it to 0, we have full ocean. So we connect the ocean mask 1 here and the ocean mask 2 as well, because ocean mask 2 gets information from the edges of the mask that are used for the tropical water, which I'll get to later. Of course, we also need to connect our displacement, because it looks very flat here, and then just connect this here and this to the displacement output of the material output, and there you go, we have a very basic setup for our planet surface. We also need to connect texture coordinate nodes to our node groups. We get this through input texture coordinates and then connect object to vector, just so that a Blender calculates how it takes the object shape into account for that. And here you go, we have a very basic looking planet already, and now we have to turn it into something that looks alien and hopefully very cool. First, we want to keep our climate zones the way they are for now, just by the default values, and focus on the continent shapes and our terrain node. So you can see here with our terrain node, we can change the shape of our continents, and you can play around with the distribution or noise value to get different looking continent shapes. And we can also use the grow to increase the amount of the planet that is covered by continent and the amount that is covered by ocean, which changes basically the ocean mask here that is connected to the ocean node. The most important input value here to make good looking planets, however, is the noise roughness, which if we increase this, you can see we get a lot more detail on our planet, and you get all these tiny islands here, and it looks a lot more realistic and detailed. You don't want to increase this by too much. You can see at 1 it looks kind of weird, but I think 0.7 is a good value for that. So we keep it at that, and I think it already looks quite good. We could play around with these values if we want different results, different looking continent shapes, but I think it's we can be quite happy with that result already. Then next we want to focus on the rivers. You can see here the rivers or rivers and lakes, they are quite big at the moment. We want them a bit smaller, so we can go here to river scale and change this up to maybe something like this. And then we could also play around with the noise setting a bit, but I think it already looks quite good. We can change the color here to something maybe a bit more lighter, a bit more light blue, a bit brighter, like this. And we can also change the river mask row value a bit, just so we don't have, the rivers are not that long. So the rivers are created by a wave texture, and then the wave texture is, like, parts of the wave texture are hidden by a Voronoi texture. And the Voronoi texture is can be controlled by these river mask settings here. So if we increase this, we increase the amount that is hidden through the Voronoi texture, and we get smaller rivers, like shorter rivers actually. Next are the mountains. Here are the mountain settings. We can set this to a different color if we want. Mountains also have snow at their peaks, which we also can change to a different color if we want, but I think we can keep it like this for now, and just play around with the different values, like peak size if we want the mountain peaks to be a bit smaller, or change the distribution, but I think it already looks quite good like this maybe, and we can keep it like that for now, and play around with it later maybe if we change the climate zones. There are also cracks that you could add, but I think they are not really needed here, and we'll just deactivate them by changing the mask to 1. Okay, so now we'll focus on the climate zones and make this planet a bit more alien looking, and for that we want to use, like, bright colors, for example a red color is a bit darker maybe, and for climate zone 1, and for climate zone 2 maybe something purple, and for 3 maybe something purple blue like this, and I think for the other one we can go with something like a green, yellow, brown something, and we can keep the last one at white, because we want, also later we'll add some ice caps, because we want the climate, like the poles covered with a bit of ice, so we can keep this at white to have snow here at the topmost climate zone and the southern climate zone. So to make our planet alien looking, I decided to go with these unusual colors, which should symbolize alien plant life on the planet that does not use chlorophyll, but uses pigments that do not absorb red, purple, or blue light in this case, just to make it more sci-fi alien looking than standard green plants on a planet. So these colors should symbolize, in this case, plant life that is on this alien planet. And with our climate zone node, we can of course also change the transition and the position of the zones. We can, for example, increase the central one. I think we can slightly decrease it here, just so, like, maybe set this to 0.15 like this, and then we can change the transition between this one and the next zone, and give it a bit more detail, for example, or distortion, or reduce the sharpness, and then we can change this around here, and also increase the roughness, which increases detail along the edges. Okay, but I think this looks pretty good already. We can maybe increase the blue zone by a bit, or maybe not, maybe decrease the fourth one, so we have more snow, and then we can maybe change, maybe we want a bit more, yeah, like this, and then we can play around with these settings until we get the desired look, but I think it looks pretty cool already. And actually we can barely see the blue color here, so maybe let's keep it like that. And now I also want to show you something that the random generator cannot do. So for example, if we want to make our red climate zone a bit more interesting, we can add in, for example, a noise Musgrave texture, and we connect this also to the object output of the texture coordinate, and then we can split the zone up into two colors. So we just copy this color here, and then we want this to have a bit orange color as well, like this. And you can see in this area we have created a mixture of these two colors here. If I make this a bit brighter, you can see it a bit better. And then I can, for example, increase here the amount of red and maybe make this a bit more orange, then we can see it better. And this way you can add complexity to your planet that you cannot do by just randomly generating an object. Of course, you can always randomly generate a planet and then add this noise Musgrave texture, for example, and to make it more complex, but you cannot do this with the generator out of the gate. You have to add something like this. And if I plug this into a material output, for example, you can see how the noise Musgrave texture looks like. And this is just a noise texture plugged into the vector of a Musgrave texture, which I think is very handy in creating like patterns that mix up the surface. And you can also play around with these values to get different results like this, for example. And then we can keep it like that and have a bit more interesting central climate zone with two colors and not just one, to add a bit more complexity to our planet. We can of course also do the same for our rivers. And for example, if we want a different color for our rivers in a certain climate zone, we can add here a color mix RGB node and then connect the climate 1 mask to the vector input. And then we can copy this color here and connect it to our river color. And then you can see in the central climate zone we have now the top color here. And for example, if we would want green rivers in the central one, we could do that by doing it this way. But like in this case, for example, we can make them a bit like purple blue. I think that looks kind of weird. Let's just make this a bit darker blue, like this, just to mix things up here on the planet a bit. And if I connect the climate zone 1 mask to a material output, you can see that here the black parts are where climate zone 1 is, and the white parts are where the other zones are. So this way you can like use these masks to apply certain colors, for example, to a certain climate zone. Then I also want to decrease the amount of snow a bit. I think it's a bit too much here, and for this I just reduce the number here like this. And we could also change the color of the mountains for certain climate zones, or with this noise Musgrave mask, for example. But I think we want to keep it like that. One thing I also want to note is that here we can, under terrain color strength, we can increase the amount of color that is shown by the mountains, because usually if I set this to 0, the color of the mountains is added to the color of the planet. So if this would be black, 0 would be added and you wouldn't see any color at all. If you want black mountains, you would have to add this to 1 in this case. But let's just undo this, and right at 0 it blends in very well with the surface. But if we set this, for example, to 0.2, we get the color here is a bit more stronger, and we have a bit more brownish looking mountains here in this case. So I think that looks quite good, and we can move on. What we can also add to add another layer of detail is add a coast color, and we can do that here in the terrain node by setting the coast color mask to 0. And then if we increase the coast size, you can see we get the color here at the edges between the ocean and the terrain. And in this case, for example, if we only want this for climate zone 1 and 2, then we can add in an add node, add climate zone 1 and 2, and then because we just added like two values of 1, we have to subtract the value of 1 to get the correct value between 0 and 1 that we want for our mask, and we connect this to the coast color mask, and you can see we only have our coast color here for climate zones 1 and 2 and not for 3, 4 and 5. So I think now we've taken care of all everything on the continents. Now we can quickly change a few things about the oceans, maybe switch up the color a bit to something more like this, for example, and we can also add tropical water here, which basically is intended to symbolize the like Caribbean water that is near the coast where coral reefs are, and is a bit has a bit more lighter color than the usual oceans. And if we set this just like the coast color to 0, you can see we get here along the edges of the continents this lighter blue color, and we can increase the size of this, for example, here, and increase the smoothness here. So that was negative values, like, so I think 0.1 is maybe, it's a bit too much, so we can reduce the size here. No, it's still a bit too much, so set this to 0.15, oops, 1.5, 0.15 for example, maybe 0.2. Yeah, I think that looks good. And we don't want that for the entire planet, so we can again just use our climate zone mask, and for example, if we only want this for climate zone 1, plug this in here, and there you go, you only have it for the central climate zone, and it's not present here at the other climate zones. Then we also want to add some ice caps to our planet, as I mentioned earlier. For this we add in an ice cap node like this. Then we have to be careful, we have to remember that we have to connect the texture coordinate object output. Let me get the object output like this, yes, and connect it to the vector input. And then we also need to connect the displacement to the ice cap node, and then the displacement output to the material output. So always the last node here is always connected to the material output, or the last one which has the displacement and the shader output. And now you can see here at the top we already have some ice caps. We want them a bit bigger, so let's set this to 0.7 for position north and south. And we also want to make the shape a bit more interesting by changing the noise roughness here, which is basically the same setting like the continent noise roughness here for the ice caps. And then the ice caps, they consist of 2 layers. First there's a thick surface, and then there's a thin surface, and the thin one is like a bit more blue and has patches, while the thick one is like more solid white. So here we can change the position of the thick surface. So this is the thick surface, this is the thin surface. Set this to 0.8 and like this. And I think the displacement here is a bit too high, so we can, if we make this a bit bigger, we can, where's the displacement? Maybe set the noise displacement, yeah, like this. So the noise displacement is like it adds like additional detail to the surface, and we can set this to 1 and maybe increase the influence a bit, so it's, well, maybe set this to 0.5, 1.5, or maybe 2. Yeah, I think that looks good. And you can see here, this is the thin surface. It has like ice patches here, and this is the thicker surface, which is more solid white in this case. And I think this looks pretty good. If we go to our camera like this, and maybe we can increase our ice caps a bit more so we can see them better in the final image. And we can also play around with the shape. Yeah, I think that's quite good looking. Maybe also change the shape here a bit for the thick surface. Increase the roughness to make it a bit more interesting, like this. So a final thing I want to add is, you remember I talked about the different alien vegetation with different colors, and we can also for example, add in bioluminescent plants that glow in the dark. So how do you do that? For this, you can add a city node, which is of course usually used to generate cityscapes here. You can see here we have our sci-fi cities here then. Wait, we have to connect this to the texture coordinate nodes again. And you can see here there's not a displacement output, so we just keep it here at the displacement output of the ice caps connected to the material output. But we need to connect the ocean mask input here from the terrain node, just so it knows where to put the cities. And in this case, we don't want them on the ocean, but actually we don't want them on the entire planet as well. We only want them on, let's say, on the purple plants here. Let's say the purple ones are the bioluminescent ones. So we connect climate zone 2 mask to the mask here, and then we only have, in this case, cities here. But as I mentioned, we don't want cities, we just want bioluminescent plants. So we deactivate all these sci-fi mega cities with this, and then we only get just the general lights that usually symbolize like smaller cities. And if I go to the dark side of the planet here, you can see, you cannot see them, but let's make this purple glowing and maybe a bit brighter so you can see it. And then you can see here these tiny purple areas here. This is where our bioluminescent plants are glowing now in the dark. And we can also play around with the settings here, and for example increase the light density or decrease it, so to get different results here. Or we could add in a noise Musgrave mask if we want to switch up like the distribution of them by connecting this to the mask here, or no, rather to this mask here. But I think we can keep it like this. Then our climate zone 2 is glowing in the dark, and then we have our final planet, and we can planet surface, and we can move on to the cloud and atmosphere layers, which is not that much work. So yeah, our planet surface is finished now. Now it's time to reactivate our cloud and atmosphere layers, and you can of course now, if you want, generate the clouds randomly with the add-on, just by selecting cloud here, selecting cloud object, and then click generate random material. And then you have different clouds, but for demonstration purposes, I of course want to do this here manually as well. So I'll delete the cloud material here, create a new material, remove the principled BSDF again, then add in a cloud group node like this. And here we just connect the volume output to the volume input of the material output. And here we also need a texture coordinate node connected to the vector, and there you go, we already have our clouds here. And you can of course add additional layers, like in the example clouds, there are 3 or 4 layers of clouds, and here it is. And we can do that here by just plugging the volume into the volume input and plugging the combined hard mask into the first mask. And there, this way you can basically stack cloud layers on top of each other and then change these around here. But we first want to focus on our first cloud layer like this. And for this, just we want to make the clouds a bit more like a bit smaller clouds, and we can increase the detail here, and then we already get some smaller clouds. And just we can play around with the seed if we want different results, and maybe increase the layer height to make them a bit thicker. And I think that already looks quite good. We could play around with all these settings here, but yeah, I think for demonstration purposes that already looks quite good. And then we can, if we want, add another layer of clouds here. We can also look at this one alone. And here we can do, for example, if we want to say our alien plants here, the red ones, they produce spores, then we can make a spore cloud, for example, by changing the volumetric color to something red, for example. And then we can try to position that with a vector mapping node, like around the red climate zone. Just rotate this one, maybe something like this. So we have, let's increase the detail a bit, just so it's not, the red color is not as strong. And then we reconnect it here with the other node, and then we have our planet covered in clouds, and the clouds here above the red climate zone, they have this kind of red color, which indicates that we have some plant spores in the atmosphere here as well. In case you're having trouble seeing how the clouds look, it can be a bit difficult depending on the planet surface. Sometimes you can always switch the planet surface material to black emission, which easily shows you can deactivate the atmosphere, how the clouds look like without the terrain, and it's a bit more visible this way. But let's reactivate the atmosphere, go back to our material, and let's take a look at the atmosphere. I think with the default atmosphere we can basically keep it as is. We want a blue atmosphere. Maybe we can increase the density up here a bit, just so make the atmosphere a bit more dense. Maybe set this to a higher number like this. And I think maybe just put this to 50, and there you go. We have our finished planet. If you want, you could also play around with the size of the atmosphere a bit by increasing it slightly, but you have to be careful when doing that. For the atmosphere layers to work correctly, you have to enter the relative scale of the atmosphere here in this node by just copying the scale and then entering it here under relative atmosphere size in comparison to the planet, and then the atmosphere layers here are correct and our atmosphere is a bit larger. But in this case, I think we just keep it with the standard values and render the image and see how it looks like. So the render just finished after about 13 minutes, and you can see here, we can see the bioluminescent plants here glowing purple. This was rendered in full HD with 500 samples and using the open image denoiser. And but I think the clouds could look a bit better, so I'll go back to our cloud node groups and change them up a bit. All right, so let's set this to black emission so we can see them better, and I think they could use a bit more turbulence, maybe like this, and maybe a bit more feathery and maybe a bit smaller. So like this. Maybe the turbulence is a bit too high. So like this. And then we'll see how the next render looks like. Just switch this back to our material and render it. So this is the final render. I'm quite happy with it. Here are a few more renders from different perspectives using the cameras that come with the blend file. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how to do near surface images using Cycle's true surface displacement and adaptive subdivision. If you're interested, I can also do more videos how to create planet materials manually, for example, for gas planets or volcanic planets, but you can always also check how I connected the nodes in the pre-designed materials, or how the render generator connects these to see how they are created. But if there's an interest here, please, if you're interested in that, please comment, and I maybe will do 1 or 2 more videos specifically about other planet types. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.